Hey there, y'all. This is Hannibal.
And this is Jupiter. And welcome to the Conversations with Hannibal and Jupiter. Tonight, we want to talk about loss. I know it may not be the easiest conversation for a lot of people, but we have all different types of loss. And I think that all loss needs to be heard and processed as well. So before we jump into this, we want to make sure that everybody remembers that we don't ever want you to watch our videos and forget to hit the subscribe button. That there allows us to bring you more wonderful content. And we know you guys love wonderful content. And Maurice does have sometimes some wonderful content. But he's not just a pretty face. He's not just a little PYT on the other screen. He does have some depth to him. So has there ever
Yes,
been
Maurice has depth.
So Maurice, has there ever been a simple loss that took you somewhere that it didn't need to happen?
So absolutely. I remember being friends with this person, and they were excessively religious. I was stationed in Alaska at the time, and they're excessively religious, and it was the loss of a friendship that actually caused me to grieve, or go into the bereavement, I guess, process, because we were really good friends. And even though they were physically still alive, but we were no longer friends. And it triggered me to go into the bereavement process. And in the bereavement process, I went through all the stages of grief, you know. And I like to just add right here that I am not a licensed mental health clinical social worker of any standard. We're not offering any type of medical advice. We're just simply relaying things that we have experienced in life and how we dealt with them. Disclaimer, don't try to sue us because we ain't got no money. All right, back to the talk show. So I went through all the stages of grief. And what I realized is that you don't just feel grief when someone physically leaves the earth, but you also feel grief when you end a friendship or when you end a marriage or end a relationship. Those stages of grief happen and you have to allow them to process in order to begin to heal on the other side of the grief. So, yeah.
And it's interesting because I was thinking about a loss that I had that I know even to this day, I never processed it. I didn't process it I didn't process it because one, I didn't know how to process it. I still don't. The other reason I did not process it because I felt like me processing my grief would cause harm to someone else. And so I didn't know how to be vulnerable in that state. And I mean, you and I have talked about it before about how, for many years I was a foster parent and I had children in and out of my life and stuff like that. But I had a child once that came to live with me that it was like he touched my soul in a sense. Like I feel like my family knew him from like another time. Like I really can't explain it, but it was just one of those things where like he really came in needing something that I felt like I didn't have, but like by him being there, discovered that I did have it. And the loss was that when his rights were severed, I did not want to adopt him at that time because the other child that I had, his rights were going to be severed soon. And so I didn't want to do it separately. I wanted them to do it together. You know, they called themselves brothers, they were brothers. So I wanted that to be a process and an event that they can share together instead of it being you do it and you do it. Well, in the time frame of him being his rights being severed, the state found his biological father, and he was given certain stipulations for how he could get his son back and things like that. And I just didn't think it was fair. I thought about if I had a child out there and I'd found out 5 years later that this person that I was with for a little bit of time in my life had a child and never told me, and now that child was taken away from them, and now somebody else was going to adopt them, and how that would feel. And then I also thought about, what would I say to that child? Like, would it look as if like I took you away from a family that you could have had? And so when it came time to it, I was very calm with my decision to say, I think it's best that he goes live with his biological father. And I cherished the time he was with me, but I just really felt that was the best thing to do. It was a very swift situation. It was like I found out almost the end of November, and he was removed about the beginning of December. But I realized with the other child in the house, I didn't
Wow.
process it. Yeah, I didn't process it at all. So he had been with me for 2 years, and within about 9 to 10 days, he was gone. And I
Wow.
remember his biological dad saying, you know what, we're going to keep in contact and stuff. But the couple of conversations that we did have, he kept calling me daddy. And I think that his biological dad, that bothered him some. And I remember texting him saying, you know what, he doesn't have to really talk to me, but if he can talk to the other child that was with me, I think that would just help them both with that transition. But those communication just kind of came to a complete halt. And I realized that I didn't process the loss because I had to focus on the other child. And I thought that me being emotional, he wouldn't know how to process that, then it would make it harder for him. And I
Right.
realized, here it is, that happened in 2016, and here it is 2022, and I still have not processed that. It was
Mm.
almost
And
like,
isn't it interesting? Isn't it interesting how it just pops back up,
it did.
just
It was
out of
this time of
nowhere?
the year. Yeah, it was this time of the
Mhm.
year. So it was like I was going through a divorce. He was removed from us. It just was like, it was a lot going on in 2016 for me. Uh, we came out on the other side stronger, but I realized I never knew how to process it. And I think a lot of it is sometimes when you're a foster parent, people kind of tell you, like, you're kind of a temporary family. But when you go through so much and you're doing a lot with these children, you're not temporary. You're the family that they have. I mean, this child had grandparents that lived in the same state we had, and they didn't want to take him. So it wasn't like he had nobody. There were people that could have, but they chose not to, which is rightfully so for them. It's nothing against them, but it is different, and somebody said, oh, it's kind of like you lost a parent, and I don't know what that's like because I didn't lose a parent. Both of my parents are alive. So every type of loss, the grieving process is different. I don't think it's easier if your parent passes away when you're young opposed to you nursing them to the last breath, or your partner passes away in a freak accident, or they have cancer and they succumb to that. Like, I don't think it works that way. I think it's just, we're never really taught a lot of times as men, or I even say in the Black community, how to process grief or even loss. We're supposed to be men, we move on, and that's it.
Exactly. And it's so interesting. I feel that sometimes in the Black community, we are taught to hold our feelings in, and sometimes you have such conversations where people will tell you, oh, you're a man, you're not supposed to cry, you're not supposed to have any emotions, oh, we're Black, you know, we have to be able to stand and take it. And so you get all of these things and they build up, right? Boom, 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 boom. And now you have this person that has no empathy. They can't show emotions. They can't show, you know, care or concern because they've been taught all these years that we can't do this. You know, we can't cry. Black men don't cry. We don't cry. You know, it makes you weak. You're gonna be a punk if you cry or something, you know, or just all that crazy, you know, the stuff people say,
Well,
you
there's like
know, and then
a
even
list of when you can cry. You know, like there's the
right,
very
right. And it's a
short
very
list.
small list.
Yes.
Exactly. You can cry at these 8
Yes.
times in your life, but you better not cry ever again because you know that's not what Black men do. We don't
No.
cry, you know. And I think it's such a disservice because then you have a man who grows up and a child who grows up into a young man and then into a man who cannot cope with emotions. They cannot cope with life. You know, their entire life they spend trying to figure something out when they really need to go back to the root problem and fix it. From that first time you heard someone say, you better not cry. You know, that's like when a parent is spanking a child and they tell the child, you better not cry. You better not cry. Well, what do you expect? You just hit me. What do you expect? You know what I mean? Like, come on now. We got to have a little common sense here. You know, I think we should encourage people to go through their process, the process of grieving. You know, I lost my mother 19 years ago, today, actually 19 years ago. And I remember um, asking for mental health assistance. And so I remember getting it when I was in the military. I went back to the military. I was a cop at the time. So obviously you experience a death, they pull your weapon and, you know, basically make you go through a process to get your weapon back. And so I um I went through like 30, 45 days of grief counseling and then, you know, reoccurring counseling thereafter, just to make sure that you're okay because the emotions hit you at different times, different places. And it made me handle my mother's death so much better because I had the right support system, you know. And I look at other people, you know, my father, for instance, who chose not to go to counseling, you know, and he struggled with it and struggled with it and struggled with it and struggled with it, even after we suggested, hey, please go to counseling, please go to counseling. It was that whole, I'm the man, I don't need no counseling, tell nobody my problems, this and that, but you're struggling with it. And we have to normalize that to, it's okay to go to counseling. We have to normalize that. So,
But it's interesting you said the part about the struggling. Like, how does one make struggling normal? You know, like I heard somebody say the other day, how like we got to stop hustling. You know, this hustle
right.
mentality. Like, well, how long do we do this? You know, and so I guess that
But
it is that thing when you think, okay, you know, you just explained that process, but you did not get past this in 35 days. This was not a
exactly.
take 12, you know, meetings with a therapist or a grief counselor, and now you're like,
Mhm.
hey, my mom passed away, I'm good, problem solved. Like, I
Right,
think we
right.
have to realize it's not about quickly solving a problem. Like, therapy is not like a pill. It's not like, oh, I have a headache, take therapy. Now I don't have a headache and I'm never gonna have a headache again. And if I do, take therapy again. No, it's a constant thing that some people have
Well,
to do.
therapy, remember that therapy is just tools.
Mhm.
Therapy is tools. You know, those initial 2 or 3 sessions are really the breakthrough. And in my opinion, they're the breakthrough and get you comfortable with your therapist comfortable with you. And I tell people if you're not comfortable with your therapist, leave that therapist, go to another one.
You gotta go. Yeah.
Do not sit through sessions
After
that
session,
are
after
pointless. You
session.
don't like your therapist, and your therapist don't like you. I tell people get with a therapist that you really enjoy. I have a therapist now that I absolutely enjoy, you know, but we can talk about so many different things on so many different levels because our lives are very similar. Um, I think we need to normalize therapy. in the Black community. We need to normalize therapy, and we need to deal with some of the trauma that, has happened throughout our lives, literally have a funeral for the trauma.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I know I was never a good person with support groups, and I remember an instance where I had gone to a support group. I'm laughing because when my friend said it to me, it was like kind of hilarious. But I had gone to the support group, and they were asking everybody to like give their email addresses, and I forgot what they wanted to do with it, but I was like, I'm not doing it. So for some reason they decided, they kept asking, did everybody put their email addresses? Da, 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 da. And people were saying yes or whatever, but then at one point about the end of the meeting, they decided to like count and said, it's like, well, it's like 17 people here, but there's only like 13 names, like 16 names on here, and I was the only person who had not signed up. And so we get back in the car, and my friend is like, you dragged me to this thing, and then they ask us to be a part of future things, and you don't even put your email address, and I was like, I don't know them hoes. Like, it's just
Right.
And so,
Mhm.
I've now learned to gain the respect of going to a support group, because before I would feel like sometimes I didn't have that empathy for some people. I didn't. I go into it, I was like, oh,
Mhm.
here she go complaining about something. Like, girl, get up. Like, the struggle is not that real. Stop it. And then I realized that some people just don't have the tools.
And they
And
don't,
if
and then
they
they
do
don't even
have the
accept
tools, they
them.
don't use them. Yeah, they don't accept them,
Mhm.
and they don't use them. And so then I realized, okay, the purpose of the support group was not for me to figure out why these other people are in the support group. The purpose was for me to be in the support group and understand my
Right.
purpose of being in the support group, not
Sir,
figuring
you're
out
not the leader. Sir, you're not the leader. Sit down.
never the moderator. But in my head, I just thought, if you stop complaining, you could. That's an easy thing for somebody to say to somebody that's like you're in an abusive relationship. But girl, learn how to box and beat them up. Like, that's not what you would say to somebody. You would figure out what to do. Like, girl, you need to go work out, so you don't have to keep getting beat in the head. Nobody's going to say that to somebody. But clearly,
Girl,
that's what I was saying.
you can't
Mhm.
duck one time when that lick comes in. Whoop,
Right.
whoop.
Yeah, you gotta
Gotcha.
learn how to bob and weave. And it was so weird because I was having these odd internal conversations with myself about these people that they had no clue. So it was like, it wasn't them, it was me. Um, but it's interesting you wore that t-shirt today.
Grace,
It
God's
was, because I remember somebody
undeserved,
saying you got to give yourself
unmerited
grace.
favor.
Sometimes you have
Mhm.
to give yourself grace, and it does
You
remind me of
do. Because you know what? You're doing better than you think you are. When you are going through a process, we are always, I like to say, in the process, I am sometimes looking at it half empty, the jar half empty. It's not always that way. It's not always that way. We have to remember to look at the positive things that are in that jar with us. So, you know, I gave myself grace today.
that.
Grace. And obviously no lotion.
Mhm. So the thing is this something that you had a conversation with your dad about today?
No. So, my father suffers from dementia, two types of dementia, vascular dementia and Alzheimer's. Along with combat PTSD, and he has cancer. So we don't do tough conversations. We don't bring
Okay.
up those emotions and things like that. I had an aunt and an uncle pass here recently. He was not told about them passing.
Mhm,
Neither do I have the obituaries laying around. I was very cautious about moving the obituaries,
mhm.
and placing them somewhere else. Um, we just don't have those conversations because I can't see the good that it would do. So, yeah.
And your siblings?
I don't know what they did.
Mhm.
I don't think anyone we didn't have the conversations. We didn't have conversations about it. My mother was one of those people who was very much like, "Okay, when I'm gone, y'all just do y'all like, please don't come to my gravesite crying and sobbing over me. Like, I'm gonna be down there looking at you like this. Like,
Why are you here? Why is he here?
I
Like,
told y'all
why
to go
is
live your best life. So
right?
please go live your best life. Stop sobbing over my grave. And I think but on a real note, I think in your first few years of losing a parent or a child, you do go back. You go back over and over and over, you know, as you begin the healing process, as you begin to come on the other side of it. I'm not going to say that you stop going, but you learn how to deal with it. My check-ins at my mother's gravesite are not as traumatic as they used to be. I think the first time I went to her grave when I was in the military, came back home, I must have stayed there 2, 3 hours. Hell, I might as well have rolled on over in the casket too. You know, but I stayed there for a while because I felt like I had not gotten the opportunity to spend time with my mother because I lived in Alaska at the time, and my family's from West Alabama. So I felt like, they can just roll up whenever they want to and see mom. I can't roll up when I want to. But over time and through the grieving process, I realized that going to the gravesite was very symbolic for me. It was something that I did when I remembered. I go on special occasions. I should have done it today, and I thought about it today. But today was just a hectic day, just like weirdly hectic. So I said, okay, maybe there's a reason, and I'm not going to force the visit, because it could have really triggered me.
Mhm.
November, December are very triggering months for my family. We lost so many people in this time, on my mother's side of the family. My mother, I had an uncle pass in December also. Um, my mother's sister and brother right around Thanksgiving. My mother's mother passed in December. So it's like a lot of them. They're kind of like back to back to back to back. So the holidays are always a little triggering, for us. I didn't even want to put up a Christmas tree this year. My brother came down yesterday and committed to putting up this tree, a beautiful tree. And he is also committed to coming taking it
I
down
was
because I
about
said,
to
if not, it will
say,
remain in this corner until next Christmas.
I was about to say, did you talk to him about tree removal services as well?
I did. This tree must come down at the new year.
Yeah, we didn't do a tree this year. We just don't really celebrate Christmas like that, so I'm okay. It doesn't feel away. Another thing I think sometimes we don't talk about is with like loss and grieving is the workplace. Like
Mhm.
sometimes we have a career and when we don't have that anymore, sometimes that's our whole identity. You see that a lot with people who are sometimes in the
Yes.
military, cops, firefighters, where like their identity is being a cop, their identity is being in the military. And when that is either taken
Mhm.
away forcefully or, it's time to retire, like you just kind of lose who you are.
Very true. I remember when I came out to service. Woo, I was happy. Woo, I was happy. I was stationed somewhere. I loved the area around where I was. But honestly, even the job was good. Like, because I had a little cushy job. I was in training and all I had to do was just kind of sit back, chill, and relax. No hard work really. I get up once a week and write a little something on a piece of paper and send it off to the next base. And that's really all I did for 360 days out of the year was But when you end a career, it is your identity sometimes. Um, when I left, the military, I joined right into aviation, and continued flying. And just so happened the company I worked for flew troops. So it was like I was still in it, I was very still involved in it. But when I left that job and I came back down to Georgia, I was like, well, what are we gonna do? But I even thought about joining back into the military. I was like, well, maybe I should just go back in service, retire out or whatever. And then I started working in the juvenile system, and being a lieutenant in the juvenile system was very easy for me because I came from a structured background. And, that very last job I had, which I can't legally mention it, but the very last job I ain't do that. It's just a net going away contract. The very the very last job I had, I think
Just to
I
let
took
y'all
on the
know, he was not
identity.
a drug dealer. That was not what it was.
I was I
He was not.
wish.
He was not indicted for embezzling money. That's not how he put a pool in his backyard. That's not how that works.
No, no, that Olympic swimming pool in my backyard. Oh. But like my last job, I think I really did take on the identity of the job, and I did grieve my last job leaving it because I really, really enjoyed what I was doing. The last couple of months were a bit weird. My manager was very, very nasty for no reason, and when I finally left, I was relieved. I didn't realize how much stress I was under for someone who, child, could care less whether I lived or died. I mean, probably cared more for toasted peanut butter crackers than me, for sure. You
Not a
know?
peanut butter and cracker sandwich.
Yes. So, I mean, I didn't realize how much I really, really was just consumed with work. you
Mhm.
know I really was consumed with work, and it was my identity. Everybody knew, oh, Maurice works for such and such, such and such. They knew when that time of year came around that we were actively involved in game, that, oh, Maurice is going to be back and forth there. All he's going to talk about is this. He may not work a normal schedule because he has things to do. And I really dove into it. When I was there in the office, I really dove into it. I learned my job. I learned other people's jobs. I learned my manager's job. I learned my manager's manager job so that I could always be marketable there. And well, child, when Miss COVID came, that wasn't a measure of marketability, no. But Miss COVID said, yes, you are the best, but you're going to be the first today. but but anyway, so I left, and when I remember the drive home from losing my job. Actually, I remember that morning. I came into the office and I had a weird feeling, and my homeboy Kevin was sitting next to me. He's like, "Yo, Gunner, what's up?" And I was like, "I said I'm gonna lose my job today." He said,
No.
"Man, I be feeling like that every day." I was like, "No, no, 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 no. Like they're going to fire me today." He's like, "Man, ain't nobody gonna fire you today." He's like, everybody forget the code sometime. We all set the alarm off. Ha ha ha. I was like, no, like they're gonna fire me today. I feel it. So literally, I started packing up my stuff, off my desk. And by the time they came around, this is like 7 o'clock in the morning. I was let go at 8:10 in the morning. And so by the time they came around, I had already packed all my stuff into my car. It was all on the back seat from my desk and everything. And my assistant friend Janice, she was like, Mr. G, you're gonna be bringing all that stuff right back in here. You know it ain't gonna fire you. They got plenty of other people on their list to fire before you that they do not like. They like you. Child went in the office at 8:02. 8:10 came out unemployed. And everybody was like, but The drive home, I grieved. I think I cried a little on the drive home, but I think I was crying more. Yeah, I did cry a little on the drive home. And I think I was crying more, not because I was afraid of income. I already had another income, as a realtor. So I wasn't bothered by the money. I think I was bothered by not having the access to that job anymore.
Mm,
I really enjoyed the people, not only in my department, but the other departments. I really enjoyed doing what I did. I enjoyed seeing the fans' faces, meeting my senior citizens. Yes, I'm not going to talk about what it is that I did, but meeting my senior citizens that worked with me, like it was nice because you see these ladies in their 70s and they're coming back, year after year after year, and you build relationships with them, and so it was one of those things where it was snatched away and I didn't have a chance to say goodbye. So I even thought about going there and like literally saying goodbye,
mhm.
but it wasn't at the time, just it wasn't necessary. Those people that wanted to hang on, they hung out with me, all the way through. So we good. Yeah. So that's my grieving process from a job.
Well, I think it's interesting because the other part about the grieving process is, like you said, losing a friend, losing a child, losing a family member, losing a job. Uh, we can also remember, like, sometimes grieving the loss of our past. Like, I don't want to be
A
21
youth.
again. I don't. I promise you. 45 is working for me. But I do miss those days. I do. Like, I don't want to go back there. I'll say this again. But I do miss, just the excitement of being 21 and, getting out of bed and not being, sore. Just
Oh.
just being able to stay up really, really, really late and get up and go to work the next day. Like,
Because you know what? We partied back in the day.
yeah, falling asleep
I
in the club next to the
party,
speaker. Like, I remember those days. I
right?
cannot do that anymore. But
Drunk rolling
right,
into the job.
right. But you have to grow up and you have to
Mhm.
say, okay, that was my youth. But sometimes we don't realize. Sometimes we got to grieve our youth. I know a lot of people who have not let their youth go, and they think they still 50 at 21, and it's like, gotta let this
And then
go.
they're still standing in the pup in a velvet suit,
That's what I'm saying. Not the velvet tracksuit, but yeah,
in the velvet tracksuit, and they standing there, ha ha ha, chewing on their tongue because their dentures don't fit properly, and it's like, hey, go play pinochle.
right. Go to that
Go
next
play
step. And
pinochle.
like I said, so I
Yeah.
do grieve that. I have grieved that, and I realize that I enjoy now. I enjoy knowing that once I'm home, I'm home. Like my mother used to always say, once I take my bra off, I ain't going nowhere. So I feel like I get to that point too, where it's like, no.
My homegirl in Mississippi, and she's from New York, she says, once I rub them feet together under that cover, I ain't coming out the house no more. And it's true. Once them feet get the rubbing together, baby, it's a wrap there. The gates of hell won't these doors up. Like, it's what it is. But I grieve my youth too. What I miss about my youth is I lived very comfortable. And that's one something I can thank God and the ancestors for. I have always lived comfortable. May not have had a lot, but I had fun, and I have memories
Mhm.
that people will never have. In my 20s, I traveled internationally. So, my first trip in aviation was down to Grenada. Grenada, I think they pronounce it as Grenada.
Grenada. It's Grenada.
So I went down there and I was like, wow, this is beautiful. And came back, that next day. And then the day after, I flew into Montego Bay, and stayed there overnight, flew back. 2 days later, I took off to Germany. And it was like, wow, and so I started meeting people and actually having a really good time. So my 20s are a good time. And people, I had a cousin tell me today that I act bougie and I act all like you act like you're above people and everything because I don't want to go to little parties. They're having a party in my hometown and no, not knocking these people who putting this party on. I bet you it's gonna be the stuff, right? But when you've done as much as I have done, sometimes you just want to sit at home and watch the Golden Girls.
I had that situation happen when I lived in Arizona. I remember people would say, "Hey, let's go out." And I'm like, it's so boring. Like, I cut my teeth on Christopher Street in New York City. Like, this bar is so late. Like, and nothing against it because it worked for Arizona. It was just, I remember somebody saying, "Well, if you don't like it, you could go back to New York." Well, 2 years later, I did. But that wasn't the point. The point was, it was like, let me have my experience. And I'm just saying, this is nice. It's, you see that in like sometimes pride parades. A pride parade in Atlanta is not the same as a pride parade in San Francisco, which is also
Right.
not the same as a pride parade in Selma, Alabama. So it's it's going to be a very different experience. And then I congratulate you for it. But like you said, I just want to be in the house sometimes. And sometimes I just want to be with friends or
Mhm.
whatever. But that 21-year-old going out, having a good time, like you said, getting on a plane and doing it stuff. I need a break. I couldn't just get on a plane, go to Vegas right now, and then come back Friday night. No. Yeah. I remember hitting the
And
floor running all the time. Now it's like
mhm.
I get in, let me check into the hotel. Let me take my shoes off. Let me put my things here. Let me
Let me
do
roll my hair up right quick.
that.
I'm gonna be in the house. I'm coming
I'm
down,
gonna go
y'all. I'm
down.
coming.
But I need to do the little thing. Back then it was like get in a hotel room, jump in the shower, put on some baby oil, and hit the streets. Now I need a little motivation to hit the streets.
But you know
Now.
what I
So
do
it's
miss? You know what I miss about that is we used to have really great house parties. We used to have really great house parties. And I can't ever remember being at a house party, whether in Alaska, California, or New York, and feeling like I don't know, I was gonna get shot or something. You know what I mean? Like we just had really good house parties. The vibe was always good, the energy was always good, the music was banging, the food was good. You know, we had
and we
house
cook
parties and I
the food, that kind of stuff. Like now
right.
it's very different because everything people do, it's like it's got to go in the gram, it's got to be catered, it's got to be a 360 camera moment. That thing you didn't have none of that. You had your auntie's peas and rice and somebody makes chicken, and y'all just had a good old time. And Dixie cups
And you
didn't call
sit
it a day.
around,
Yeah, and you
people
just
knew to
talk
bring a
shit. You
bottle.
played
If you couldn't
spades. You
bring a
played
bottle,
Pacino.
right.
You just did all those things. It was different to go out. Like it wasn't an event. It was a vibe. So it is different.
And
Yeah.
it taught you how to save too, because the time when I lived in New York, it was expensive in New York City. It was expensive in
Really.
New York City. Even though we made really good money, it was still expensive in New York
Hmm.
City. And so I appreciated that about house parties and things like that because I remember just there were times I was so broke and I was making good money, really good money, but I was partying. Like I told you, I was partying internationally. I
Hmm.
remember being so broke. I was like, "Oh my god, it's a house party tonight." Okay, I took all these minis from the aircraft, so I'm bring them all little shots, bring like 30 shots over in my little bag, and I'm gonna be able to eat and chill and everything. And nobody looked down on when you were in that moment. And even if I had a came in with nothing in my hand, wasn't a thing gonna be said because we
Right.
all cool. If I got it today and you don't have it, you might have it tomorrow. I don't have it. So we're gonna take care of each other. But nowadays, it's like you walk in a party and you don't bring a bottle and a bottle of standard, by the way. If you don't bring a bottle, the kids want to reach you to the floor, call your old heads and all types of stuff. Broke this, broke that. I'm grieving my house parties. So let me get back on topic. I'm grieving house parties, the old school house party. I'm grieving like the
And like
club
house parties when
parent.
you were like dancing with people, like the music was playing and we
Yes.
were dancing with each
Oh,
other. We just weren't sitting in our chair, looking on our phones, on these little social media
no.
apps. We were actually dancing with each other at the party. Yeah, that I do
I remember a house
remember.
party, the neighbor, she came over, she's an old Jamaican lady. She didn't like no gay people. But she was like, what's going on over here? The Lord is gonna come. Oh, my son. Ooh, baby. I tell you, she walked up in there, that house go, honey, and she snatched the religion through him, and then we was all praying in the air. But she eventually came back and apologized,
Mhm.
and she was like, just turn the music down a little bit, I'm trying to sleep. So we turned the music down and we was like, okay, cool. And we kept partying, but she was shocked to see her son up in there. I don't know what conversation he had with her when he took her back home. Well, she took him home. Uh, but she came back to apologize. What happened here?
Yeah, I corrupted her son.
Right. It's unfortunate.
But give yourself grace for doing that.
Well, my thing is like, I think he planned it with the guy next door. I think he was like part of the party planning crew.
He's
So
part of
all
the
of us got the invite, but you're part of the crew.
he's part of the planning committee, so you don't understand why his mother was upset about it.
I don't understand, sir. I don't understand. Please tell us. Please tell us what happened. What did your mother do to you? Maybe we should interview him. Like, child, what did your mother do to you 21 years ago? Did she snatch your life through you, or did she just kill you in the back room? Why
Right?
haven't we seen
That's one
you
of
in
those
so many
where they
years?
now. That's a where they now
Right.
episode.
And she's probably like Hudson River. No, but like it was just good times. It was good times. And that's something that I missed in Atlanta when I lived in Atlanta. We didn't have house parties there. My group of friends in West End, we did have porch parties, which were very similar to house parties, but we never really party. We had a good time. My crew in West End, I could go with them any day of the week and we still gonna have a good time. But it wasn't the 21, 22-year-old house parties that we were having.
Mhm, right.
So I grieve that. Yep.
Well, this has been very enjoyable, and it is
Yes.
true. We have to learn how to process grief, and we have to allow ourselves to have these emotions and feelings, even if we are men who sleep with men who don't sleep with men. Um, we have to be careful of, like you said, stifling that dream
Mhm.
and stifling those emotions as well, because they can come out in some other very negative way. On that
Yes.
note, I am going to say thank you for allowing me to share with you today, Hannibal. I think I
I
needed to get
can't
that
do it.
out.
Can't do it. Can't do it.
Yeah, thank you for allowing me to share that. I think I needed to get that out today. So thank you for that.
and it's good to get it out. Sometimes we just have to talk through, you know, we just have to talk through it. But I would like to say thank you for sharing. And
You're
thank you
very
for allowing me to be on the receiving end of sharing. And always
welcome.
remember, give yourself grace.
Exactly.
All
Take
righty.
care,
Have a good
everyone.
night.
Good night.
Bye.